Hi everyone, welcome to Tales of Dread. In this episode we have 3 Dogman stories for you. My cousin and I rented a small log cabin in upstate New York last December. We were closer than that. We got older together. So, in a way, we were. For 2 nights, we rented this small cabin with 2 bedrooms. It was just a short trip for the weekend. Right before the holidays, when we got there, I saw this dirty-looking journal on the coffee table in the corner. I didn't think much of it because everything around me looked old and rough. Anyway, at first I thought it was just a decoration, but when I opened it, my cousin handed me a cold beer and asked, "What's that?" "Small black square, small black square," I shrugged. "I don't know, it's just someone's diary. Maybe it was forgotten by the last person who was here." The more I read, the more I got goosebumps all over my body. I was correct. The date was from last week, so it was the last person to be here. I won't say his name because I want to protect his privacy, but his journal says that he saw and heard things in the woods around the wood cabin. It talks about eyes, things outside the window that are watching them, and scratching sounds. Small black square, it just gets deeper and deeper. The more I read, the more I feel like I'm reading a Stephen King book. What did that mean? As the book fell, I dropped the book on the table. It landed on its cover, showing what looked like dried blood, palm and fingerprints on the back of the person's journal. Small black square, small black square, small black square, it looks like blood. But I couldn't say for sure. Then, whatever it was, we heard something moving on the roof of our cabin. As it shook the walls and all the decorations on them, it sounded very heavy. I could hear a low growl, but I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. It wasn't coming from inside the cabin, though. It came from outside, but it didn't sound too far away. My cousin turned off all the lights and came over to stand next to me. "What's happening here?" "I don't know, dude. I do know, though, that there is something outside this cabin." My cousin nodded and then pointed to the sky. "I need to double check that the front door is locked." Then he started running toward the front door. I didn't move. I was too shocked and deep in thought to move. I was trying to figure out what was really going on here. Was it a joke that someone left as a creepy-looking old journal that talked about monsters in the woods, or was there really something out there? When I heard the house, I knew it was a cryptid. Small black square, small black square, small black square, small black square, small black square. As my cousin ran back over to me, he stopped frozen in his tracks, about 3 feet standing right in front of me. Small black square, small black square, but he wasn't staring at me. Small black square, he was staring past me. Small black square, small black square. His body was shaking and he dropped his beer, breaking the glass all over the wooden floor. He put his hands up and pointed past my shoulder while mumbling to himself. I slowly turned my head and looked in the direction of the kitchen window. At first, it was just pitch black because it was late, but as the storm got worse and lightning lit up the sky, it became clear that something was going on. Then I saw the same thing my cousin had seen. Small black square, small black square, small black square, small black square. There was this head of this huge, canine-like man, just, small black square, smiling, small black square, somewhat growling, fogging up the window as his snout pressed against the glass. Small black square, small black square, small black square. Its large hand pressed up slightly against the glass, like it was twiddling its claw, scratching the surface of the glass with its claw-like nails. We moved slowly away from the kitchen and toward the front door. The keys were still in my pocket. Thank God, once we were in the hallway, we saw that the thing on the window had gone away. "Get in the car," I told my cousin, "now we're leaving." As we ran towards the front door, there was no hesitation. The big bang on the roof came at that time. We were now on top of this thing. We didn't know where it was or what it could see from above us. We didn't even know if it was safe to run to the truck yet. If we had opened the front door and gone outside, it would have jumped on our backs. Was it even worth taking the chance, or should we just stay home, call the police, and wait? There was only one right answer. The answer was to get away quickly. We didn't have any weapons with us, so we couldn't even defend ourselves. This cabin had a lot of glass windows, which is another reason. This thing could have easily broken inside, but I think it's having too much fun right now. We really had no choice but to get to the truck and get out of there as soon as possible. Both of us waved until the count of 3. We swung the door open and ran as fast as we could to the truck. Luckily, the doors weren't locked because we're pretty far from civilization and I didn't bother to lock anything. We got in the truck, turned it on, put it in reverse, and drove as fast as we could out of there. Something is out there in the woods near my land. I've seen it a few times now. At first, I thought it was just my night vision playing tricks on me, but now I'm sure there's something out there. When I was done with all my tasks on the farm, I always did a quick walk through. Before I went to bed at night, I would check on everything and every animal to make sure they were all safe and sound. In Alabama, my land is in the northeast corner. I won't say the name of the town because, to be honest, I don't want any visitors, especially those I can't even describe. About 7 o'clock in the evening, the sun had set and the moon had risen. There were beautiful stars in a clear night sky. I checked on the chickens and, of course, they were all there. I went to see how the sheep and pigs were doing, and then I went to see how the horses were doing. Everything was fine until I got to the part with the goats. That's when I knew there was something very wrong. I only saw 4 goats, but there were 5 of them. I walked around the wooden fence to see if he was sleeping in a corner or in the little den I had built for him. When I looked down, I saw blood all over the dirt and hay on the ground. It was all over, and there was a path that led past my wooden fence to the edge of my property. I thought to myself, damn, those coyotes are at it again. I ran back into my house to get my 2-barreled shotgun. I took it down from the wall mount and took it outside with me. I heard the howling in the distance at that time. It was hard to tell where the sound was really coming from, so I ran back to where the other goats were and where the blood was still on the ground. I walked slowly in the right direction and followed the blood trail that led off my property and into the woods. As I walked quietly so as not to make a sound, I pointed my flashlight down the barrel. I knew that whatever it was, it couldn't have dragged my goat too far, because all of my goats were full-grown adults and pretty heavy. Still, I went slowly, just in case. As I walked along the dirt path, I started to see a trail of footprints. What scared me the most was this. I didn't know what I was really following, when I followed the footprints. They weren't exactly like wolves, but they weren't like people either. I really have no idea what it was. But whatever it was, it got on my nerves and had to die because of that. So I kept going quietly. I was getting pretty far into the woods at this point. This is my land, though, so I know how to get back. I left the porch light on, and if I do say so myself, it's pretty bright because it's one of those new LED lights that can be seen from a couple miles away. It's a huge porch light that I built myself and am very proud of. That's all I have to say about the light. It had been about 15 to 20 minutes. Now, I am pretty far into the woods. By this time, I had noticed that the blood was a little bit wetter than it had been before. Suddenly, I came across a leg. It was a goat leg, and my goat had just left it there, shredding it and leaving the pieces on the hay grass. I started to get goosebumps all over my body as the blood kept coming in. First, what would happen to this piece of leg? They don't leave anything for their animals out here that are hungry. I made sure that my shotgun was loaded, and then I moved on. I could no longer see my light from the porch of my house. Then, out of nowhere, I heard something. It seemed to be close. It sounded like branches or twigs were breaking off to my left. I used the flashlight in my gun to look around. There was nothing but branches moving. I turned around in a full 360-degree circle. I pointed my gun straight up. I looked everywhere, but I couldn't find anything. After taking a few more steps, I let my eyes get used to the dark. I saw the reflection in the eyes at that point. I could see this thing quickly chomping down on something with its teeth and fingers. As I got closer, I could see that this thing sort of looked like a man, but it also sort of looked like a dog. It was a lot bigger than me, hunched over, and had a dark black face like a dog. It had sharp claws that looked more like those of a human. It was tearing my coat. No, that's not right. This thing was tearing my coat. The watch was gross, but I didn't want to make a sound and give away my location. Luckily, I had turned off my flashlight, and I was literally shaking in my boots after this thing, which had been eating my pet for what seemed like hours, had finished. It put its nose up to the sky and began sniffing the air. Small black square, small black square, small black square, oh God. I think it could smell me, and as soon as I had that thought, the creature turned and looked right at me. The thing let go of my goat, and it started running straight toward me. I was really scared. I couldn't do anything but raise my gun, close my eyes, and pull the trigger. I heard a loud scream, but the creature was gone when I opened my eyes. It was nowhere to be seen at all. I turned around and ran back as fast as I could. Direction is how I got back to my house. I was so very scared. I didn't bother reloading my gun at all. I was still holding it, but at this point I was just running full speed. I ran and ran. I can't even describe how long it seemed to take. I was really scared. Then the house came back. Whatever it wasn't dead, it was still very much alive. How far away was it? That was the question. I could hear something far away, but I couldn't quite figure out what it was. I knew it was that thing, but I didn't know if it was walking, running at a gallop, or just messing with me. I had no idea. I couldn't think straight at this point. I made it back to my house in the end. I ran inside, locked the doors, and turned off all the lights. I got down on my knees and crept into the lower window with the blinds. I looked out the window, but there was nothing there. It didn't look like whatever I had shot had followed me back home. I let out a sigh of relief, and just as I did, I heard a loud banging on the front door of my wooden house. I slowly got up from my knees, leaning my shoulder against the wall as I did so. I walked slowly to the front door and looked out at the people. There wasn't anyone there. How could anyone even be there? Just then, I walked in. A couple minutes ago. As my adrenaline kicked in, I reloaded my shotgun, unlocked the latch, and slowly opened the door. I could handle anything. At this point, I pulled out my shotgun and went out onto the porch, but there was nothing there and no one was there. I slowly lowered my head and looked at what was near my boots on the front porch. It was the top of my goat's head. I live on the outskirts of Anchorage, which is a big city in Alaska. Alaska? I have lived here for 10 years. I really enjoy being out here. I live in the middle of nowhere. The next person to me is a long way away. I made my cabin on my own. I had some help, but it's still my work. I own the land. I don't have to worry about all the rules and regulations, mumbo jumbo, and other nonsense that you do back in California. Anyway, getting back to the point, if you want to go somewhere beautiful, you can. I mean, when you wake up and look outside, you see the wilderness, the mountains in the winter, and snow that never stops falling. That's the only bad thing I can say about Alaska's landscape. When winter comes, it comes with a vengeance. The weather is very different from the weather in other states. I think the only people who are kind of used to it are probably Canadians and Russians, who aren't too far away either. I was born and raised in northern Kansas. My family and I grew up on a farm. So I know what you mean about the cold and raising animals on your own, especially if you need to do it to stay alive. But the beast that lives near me in the woods was not something I was taught about or ever saw in my life. The thing that stares at me at night with red eyes that glow. It has never hurt me, but it follows me around like I'm some kind of prey. It keeps going around and around my property. Mind you, it looked like it was thinking about its next move and when to make it. This beast doesn't get too close, but it's close enough that you could see it even with your eyes closed. It's big, dark, and muscular, and it might even have hair. It looks a lot like a wolf, but I can't be sure because I only see it at night. When it stands up, it looks like a man hunched over. I'd say it's at least 6 to 7 feet high. But, on the other hand, it's hard to tell how far away something is at night. It sometimes just stands near some nearby trees and slaps the bark hard, like it wants me to come closer and pay attention to it, which I do. There's no denying that I see it often as I walk around my property at night. But, as I've already said, it has never attacked. It's almost like it's just testing the waters or getting to know its enemy. Some mornings, I've found the remains of dead animals or rodents on the porch outside my door. Small black square, I have a funny feeling. It's that animal that put them there. I don't know why it does that. It could be a sign of friendship or warning. I don't leave it on my porch either way. Every night, I clean up the blood and put all the pieces of meat, blood, fat, and fur into a trash bag and put it in my trash can. By the time I wake up in the morning, the bag is always gone. I've made a few phone calls and done some research on my own online and by phone. I even went to the local library to see if there was any history, news or anything else that could help me understand what I keep seeing in the woods. Small black square, I've even spoke to my neighbors. When I talk about how this thing looks, no one seems to want to talk. It almost seems to scare people into acting in a certain way. At first, I thought they just didn't care about me. But the more I told them what was going on, the more it seemed like they were trying to hide or avoid me. It seems like everyone knew but me. I randomly talked to 2 teenagers at a grocery store the other day. I don't know how this turned into a conversation, but it did. They told me that their grandparents had seen the same thing I was telling them about. People thought it was just an old story. But now I know it's true. The story goes that this creature leaves those things on your porch as gifts or gestures. Don't worry, it will never happen. But if you leave something else on your porch in exchange, the thing will leave. Small black square, small black square, small black square, and according to their legend, small black square, eventually, small black square, if you keep taking their gestures and never replacing it with a gesture of your own, small black square, the beast will become agitated and eventually start getting, small black square, closer, small black square, eventually attacking, small black square, you or anything that's on your property, small black square, small black square. For the past 7 days I've been leaving large pieces of steak and prime rib. I know it's expensive, but I thought it was worth it. In the end, on the 8th night, my gifts were still on the front porch. So I think the creature is now interested in someone else. At least, I hope that's the case. Small black square, 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 small black square.